quest to capture more power from the wind. Does the answer lie in networks of giant wind farms or in a revolutionary new kind of turbine? Or might the real solution lie up in the stratosphere with this lone inventor's unique vision to change the way we power our world? What will the future look like? And who are the people inventing it? Brilliant thinkers, cutting-edge research, backyard inventors on the very fringes of science. This is where tomorrow is born. This is Innovation Nation. The wind. Powerful, unpredictable, and sometimes devastating. But if we can find a way to tame it, to truly harness its full potential, it could actually provide us with all of our energy needs many times over. It's an energy Goliath, green and renewable, capable of lighting every city, powering every electric car. We're going on an unconventional journey around the globe in search of the future of wind power. And the future is often born in the most unlikely of places. This is Boron, California. Population 2,000. A sleepy town on the edge of the Mojave Desert. There are no million-dollar science labs here. This quiet compound on the edge of town may actually be ground zero for an idea that changes our entire planet. The birthplace of the next Microsoft of wind power. Meet Doug Selson, a self-taught inventor with big dreams of the world to come.
As everybody knows, if we're dependent on fossil fuels right now, there is a limited supply of fossil fuels. We're going to need some way to get affordable electricity and power, and the wind will provide as much of that as we could ever use. All we really need to do is reach up and grab it.
Despite a lack of research funding, Doug lives and breathes wind power. Every inch of his small apartment is crowded with his plans to change the future.
For so many years I wondered, well, how can I ever get to really be an inventor? I mean, you can't really go to school where they have inventor school or something where somebody teaches you how. At some point you have to realize, hey, I've got ideas that nobody else has, and the only way to pursue it is to actually pursue it. You know, I've got more types of wind turbine patented than anyone in the world. I've got patents all over the world, okay? I mean, here's a stack of my patents so far.
His biggest brainstorm, a rethinking of traditional wind turbine design, a design that hasn't changed in over 1,000 years. Traditional turbines place a single rotor on a fixed pedestal. Today's versions eat up massive amounts of material and mechanics. They're expensive and take up plenty of real estate, key hurdles facing the wider spread of wind power. Doug's plan is to change all that.
The spark of the idea came to me when I was a teenager. And the idea was, if one propeller is good, more propellers might be better. My vision is that the wind turbine of the future will not have just one propeller.
At his test site in Boron, Doug has assembled a number of small multi-prop turbines, each one a work of ingenuity. But today he will build and test his biggest invention yet, a version of something he calls a super turbine, capable of going where no turbine has gone before. By using multiple propellers that share one drive shaft, this turbine should harness more wind for the amount of material used than traditional turbines.
We've got the generator here. This is just a bearing. This is a long drive shaft. In the past, it had been inadvisable to try to put a second propeller downwind from a first propeller because the first propeller obviously is blocking the wind. My innovation was to provide sufficient spacing between the propellers and sufficient offset angle of the drive shaft direction from the wind direction so the wind can sneak inside and get into each rotor. We can literally use 1/10 of the material to get the same power using super turbine technology. We can span impossible terrain rather than worrying about trying to build roads in there and disturbing the ecosystem. So in effect, with 2 stations, we can put an entire wind farm stretched across a mountain pass. And what we've basically got here is the next step in wind energy.
If Doug plans to revolutionize the wind power industry, the super turbine has to perform. Loaded up with fiberglass drive shafts, Doug makes his way to the machine shop to pick up some custom-made hubs. Then it's off to the test site in Boron to assemble his invention. If it works, the super turbine could span canyons or mountain passes. But for now, this smaller 120-foot prototype will be tested between two fixed points on the compound. Doug has decided on 7-foot spacing for the blades. Too far apart and potential wind power will blow right through. Too close together and the blades will block one another out. The beauty of this design is its simplicity. Unlike traditional turbines, it has no gearbox or complex mechanics. It has only one moving part, a flexible drive shaft connected directly to a generator.
Essentially what we're doing right now is we're going to tilt up that tower that you can see down at the far end there. And when we tilt that tower up, that end will be 40 feet in the air.
Tomorrow, the team will carefully hoist up this giant structure into the wind. The slightest misstep could bring the whole thing crashing back down.
Probably the worst case scenario would be we don't get any wind. Nothing like this has ever been done before, so we're totally treading into the unknown here. We're going on a little bit of faith here.
Faith in their design, and faith that the wind will blow when they need it.
Okay, pull forward. Straighten it out, straighten it out. There we go.
This is the view from the top of a giant wind turbine in the Canadian province of Saskatchewan, 2,000 kilometers to the northeast of Doug Selsom's super turbine build. Saskatchewan is known for its agricultural resources and also its strong winds. While turbine designs may change radically in the near future, those wanting to capture it on a large scale today need to get their hands on a field of these. Each one of these turbines is a mega structure, standing as high as a 12-story building with rotors spanning 50 meters. This facility is operated by Sask Power, the province's utility. Combined with another nearby wind farm, the largest in Canada when it first opened, wind power in the province provides enough electricity to power 60,000 homes each year, pollution-free. The trouble with the wind is that unlike other power sources like coal, hydro or nuclear, it isn't always there when you need it.
Operations like ours have to learn how to manage wind, predict wind, commit generating units to accommodate wind, and work around it so our customer keeps his lights on.
If you could find a way to get 100% of the province's needs, if you could find that much wind capacity and get it built and get the lines to interconnect with the load, you would still need that much capacity. You'd still need to build power plants to have available to run for the days when the wind didn't blow.
Sask Power's wind farms are examples of innovation on a large commercial scale. They require vast amounts of open space, often far removed from cities or the heart of industry. But what if we could use wind power to create steady electricity right at the places that use it the most? Meet Barry Ireland, another pioneer in wind turbine design, much like Doug Selsom in California. Barry is based in Moosomin, Saskatchewan, just a few hours east of Sask Power's control center in Regina. Barry's vision of the future came to him while working on the towering exhaust stacks common in modern factories. Emissions sent skyward from these mega chimneys create an updraft around the stack. This updraft, it turns out, is an incredibly reliable form of man-made wind. To harness this power, Barry designed a revolutionary kind of turbine called V-bine, which is being assembled today in his warehouse.
A vertical access wind turbine is different from what most people are used to. Most people are used to a turbine that goes this way, and whereas a vertical access goes this way.
While it can be mounted on top of any building or structure, its unique stationary coil also means it can be fitted around large exhaust stacks. It doesn't have any gearboxes, pulleys or belts, so it runs quietly and efficiently under very little wind speed. It can also grab gusts from any direction and is suitable for use in cities and towns. To demonstrate, Barry Ireland and his team are about to fire up a working version of their V-bine turbine on a small tower outside. And back in California, Doug Selsom is about to hoist up what he believes is the most efficient wind turbine on the planet. Afterwards, he will launch another amazing device called the Sky Serpent, deemed to be the invention of the year by Popular Mechanics magazine.
The Sky Serpent is one version of the super turbine that flies. Yeah, have them come.
Hoping to revolutionize the way we harness wind power, Doug Selsom is ready to lift up the prototype of his super turbine, a device he believes is 10 times more efficient than the world's largest traditional turbines. Using oil drums and milk crates as temporary supports, this is guerrilla science at its very best.
You know that quote from Einstein?
What happened?
If we knew what we were doing, they wouldn't call it research. Luckily, we got a few people here to help out, and we've mounted this whole generator frame assembly onto the front of this boom that's mounted on the front of our test truck, and we're about to tilt it up as we drive the truck forward. We're going to tilt up the tower on the other end, and we're just going to see what this thing looks like in the air now. Yeah, actually, you know,
what I want is one person. We're going to move this truck here. Okay? We'll have one person looking at everything, back and forth, looking at everything.
All right.
And that person is controlling Marco and my motion.
Okay.
Marco's going to move forward, I'm going to move backward, and we're going to...
Okay.
And it may be a situation where you have to have me stop and Marco move forward, or, you know?
Okay.
Lifting this super turbine into the air involves plenty of trial and error. And with each setback, frustration grows.
Yeah, have them come. This is why we have to have everybody here so that doesn't happen. I don't know how many times I've said it now. I mean, like, you know, having all these people doesn't help if nobody's doing anything.
With everyone in place, some delicate give and take between Doug's van and Norman's truck gradually gets the job done. High above the test site and carefully angled so that each blade is exposed to the elements, this super turbine is finally ready for testing. But after all their hard work, one key ingredient is suddenly missing in action.
Problem is right now, we really have no wind. Frustrating thing about wind energy, when you don't have wind, it doesn't work.
When the wind won't come to you, sometimes you have to go to it. This Goliath of a turbine wasn't cheap or easy to build. That's because it sits a full 2 kilometers out to sea, part of a bold offshore wind project in Copenhagen, Denmark. In an attempt to capture the most reliable winds in the area, 20 massive turbines stand like sentries guarding the historic city. When it was constructed, this wind farm was the largest offshore wind facility on the planet. 2 quick turns of these giant rotors covers the electrical needs of one person for one day. Acting together, this sea-based farm provides Copenhagen with 4% of its power. But while the winds may be stronger and more consistent offshore, building a turbine at sea can cost almost twice as much as building one on land. And even here, off the windy Danish coast, there are days when these blades sit perfectly still. The problem with the wind, it's either use it or lose it. The true holy grail of wind power on our planet is finding a good way to store it. If we can find an efficient way to do this, wind could become as reliable as coal or oil, a stable, clean and endless resource to power the future. Meanwhile, back in California, Mother Nature has returned with a prevailing wind, and Doug Selsom's super turbine is set free on its maiden spin. All 20 rotors work together to produce a steady stream of electricity to the small generator. Doug is convinced that we're looking at the cheapest but most efficient turbine in the world.
This model is confirmation, one more confirmation that the concept in general works. This is the biggest one yet. It's operating smoothly. Things are looking real good. This is 120 feet. I think to make it 10 times as long would be no problem whatsoever. Eventually go from mountaintop to mountaintop, maybe a few miles long.
With the stationary test successful, Doug is now ready to see if he can take his invention into the sky.
The wind energy really is a completely sky-based activity, and these steel towers that can push maybe 200-300 feet up into the sky, great to get us where we are today, but we're looking at the 21st century here with a big push toward green energy. I think if we seriously want to grab wind energy out of the sky, let's go up into the sky where the real wind energy is.
But just how much more wind is available if you're willing to go up, way up? This is the view from the top of Bratz Lake Observatory in Saskatchewan, a few hours east of the wind farms run by Sask Power. This observatory is part of a global network that monitors solar radiation, ozone levels, wind, temperature and precipitation. To help do this, the observatory regularly sends up weather balloons, the perfect devices for exploring high-altitude winds. This weather balloon's payload is a radio and ozone probe, protected by a styrofoam flight box. During the flight, the probe will transmit atmospheric data back to this receiver on the ground. Once assembled, the payload is attached to a helium balloon and released. Today at ground level, the wind's pretty much non-existent, but data from the weather balloon shows how dramatically things change skywards. 1 kilometer up, the weather balloon encounters 20 kilometers an hour winds. A little further up, wind speed doubles to 40 k an hour. At 4 kilometers up, it doubles again to 80 k an hour. And at 11 kilometers above the Earth's surface, up at the height of the jet stream, the balloon encounters wind speeds of a whopping 250 k an hour, twice as strong as a hurricane-force wind on the ground. It's these kind of winds that Doug Selsom hopes to one day go after as he gets ready to launch the prototype of the Sky Serpent. And back in Saskatchewan, Barry Ireland and his team at V-Bine are ready for an outdoor demonstration of their unique vertical axis turbine. A turbine they believe will eventually grace towers, buildings and utility lines around the globe. In Moosomin, Saskatchewan, Barry Ireland and his team at V-Bine are firing up their vertical axis turbine on a tower outside of their workshop. It effortlessly swings into motion, generating a steady stream of clean, renewable power. Unlike traditional turbines, it has no gearbox or drive shafts and can harness the wind from any direction. The team evaluates its performance.
120 RPM, 40 volts, 15 amps. Well, that looks good. That's pretty fair.
With 3 phases of power generation, this adds up to 3,000 watts of power. The V-Bine team is pleased with the results. This furthers Barry Ireland's dream of his turbine becoming a fixture on structures all around the world. Back in California, Doug Selsom is assembling his Sky Serpent super turbine. Like the Cross Canyon version, the Sky Serpent has a single drive shaft turned by a series of rotors. It truly has only one moving part. But unlike his Cross Canyon version, one end won't be connected to a fixed point on the ground. Instead, it will be lifted skyward by a collection of helium balloons.
We're in final assembly of our drive shaft here. I've got one more set screw to put in, and then we're going to be ready to start filling balloons with helium and elevating this end of the drive shaft. This end of the drive shaft will be about 30 degrees into the sky. The whole thing's going to spin together. All the propellers spin the drive shaft together, and they're going to spin that generator right there on top of the truck.
Don't blow it up.
The team attaches a total of 6 large helium balloons to get the floating end of the Sky Serpent into the perfect position above the desert. With everything set, Doug prepares to unlock the drive shaft.
That's good, right there. Okay. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go!
The test flight goes off without a hitch. The beauty of the super turbine lies in its simplicity and efficiency.
Okay, we see traditional turbines in the background. Today's a light wind day. They may be using power as much as making power. It's hard to really say. It's a light wind day, and I'd say our machine here, we're probably making about 1 kilowatt as opposed to the 3 kilowatts it's capable of. Essentially what we have here is a demo that the technology works. This is the first flying wind turbine in the world, and there it is. It's in the air. It's producing power. It's spinning this generator. We envision rather than an 80-foot drive shaft, we might get to an 800-foot drive shaft next, maybe an 8,000-foot long drive shaft, and at some point we'll be up into the trade winds and then the stratosphere where they have 120-mile-an-hour winds the majority of the time. 20 years from now, I think you're going to see wind farms across the vast open plains, everywhere from Mongolia to the Midwest of the United States to California here, possibly underwater, out in the ocean. You're going to see super turbine arrays everywhere. I don't think people will still be manufacturing single rotor turbines once this takes hold.
If the wind truly has a chance of becoming the planet's primary power source in the decades to come, perhaps the tipping point will involve a combination of new designs and innovations. Large-scale wind farms like the one in Saskatchewan may eventually incorporate new turbine designs that harness the wind cheaply and more efficiently on a massive commercial scale. And finding a good way to store the wind would allow us to rely on this clean, renewable power source like never before.
I mean, it's always going to be there. The wind is never going to stop. We're always going to have it. And so we don't need to worry about running out of wind. And it's clean. All we really need to do is reach up and grab it.